Welcome to the March 15, 2018 Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting. David, if you could read the agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll have a period of public comment, and then an update on the library accounts payable warrant with the finance director, and then go into the annual town meeting items for consideration of town meeting articles, consideration of capital items, and that will be a police department with Chief Richard Thompson, and town buildings Sean Colleen with CM&D Director, Facilities Manager. The town campus site plan and parking changes are not going to be ready for tonight, so we should amend the agenda to remove that item. Then a discussion regarding ALS services with Fire Chief Kinney, and consideration of a one-day liquor license with trivia night fundraiser for the library, consideration of reserve fund transfer for the planning board for formatting of the general plan, open space, and recreation plan. And then under routine business, town administrator report, and then consideration of town administrator's payroll and selectmen items, reports. And the meeting calendar, the next meeting is March 17th at the advisory hearing. And the next meeting, just the selectmen, would be March 26th. Then adjourn to executive session, may return to open session for MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21-2, to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Sean Colleen, CM&D Director, Facilities Manager. And we may not have to have the executive session.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept with the change that David requested on the town campus site plan?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
But just on the discussion,
No discussion, sure.
I commend you for saying we're going to do all of this in 1 hour. This is great. We start at 7, we end at 8.
Let's see if we can do it.
Beautiful.
It's great. So that sounds like that's a favorable vote on the agenda. So, thanks, Paul. Okay, so do we have a public comment?
No, I don't believe so.
I didn't
No?
see any.
Okay, good. All right. We're catching up already. Financial report, Sharon.
Okay, let me go fast. So the library, so far to date, we've incurred $3.9 million in expenses that we've paid out. And the first page just shows you the vendors that we paid. I do want to draw your attention, though, to under receipts, the $1 million that was borrowed is now available and has been deposited into the account, so I'll update that accordingly. And then the second page is just the cash flow, and you can see that for March, the contractor had projected a burn rate of $908,000, and as of the warrant that was just signed, we've only incurred $285,000, but then again, we've had, 3 nor'easters in 10 days, so to be expected. So as of right now, cash flow is trending as they have indicated. And then the last page, this is something that we've been keeping track of, and these are expenses that the town has incurred to date. And you can see that there's Whitewater, there's also the Hartford, which is builder's risk insurance that we also had to renew. So there's about $122,000 in expenses that we've incurred that are associated with the project. So we're keeping track of it in a separate line item in the town buildings.
Okay, so, and what, that's coming out of the town buildings account?
Yes, that's where it's being charged right now, yes.
Yeah, okay. And so we have an understanding with the library trustees that we'll talk about that at some.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm just keeping track of it, and I thought, and Diane and David thought it would be important for me to share that and keep you up to date with that, so.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, so that's it. Any questions?
Well, I do have a question, which is, I mean, they're, well, and I don't know that you'll be able to answer this, but they are well behind the expenditures for this year, which, maybe some of it's weather related. They're awfully far behind where they were planning to be, looks like about 1.2 million behind where they were planning to be at this point. The next 2 months are also scheduled to be pretty heavy months. And I know we heard the library trustees talk a couple weeks ago about the schedule and the idea that they wanted to have people try to move in by June, July type timeframe, right?
Yeah,
Does that
I
still
mean,
look realistic?
Sean, do you want to speak to that? Because I haven't been to the last two
Current
meetings.
schedule is not June and July.
It's not.
No, okay. And that's why we renewed that builder's risk insurance as well, so.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, great. Thanks, Sharon, that was great. Next, consideration of town meeting articles. And I wonder if we want to move the capital items in front of this, since we've
Yes.
got some folks here. Is that,
Yes,
everybody okay
take
with
care of
that?
the people who are here. They are busy.
They got other things to do. Okay, great. So we've got, Chief, you want to go?
But haven't we already heard these?
No, he wasn't here last week, so we voted to include it on the warrant, but I think
Yeah, I don't
let's
think
give
we've
him a
had a
chance to
presentation
explain
yet
what the
as
capital
to what
items
they
are. Right.
Last time Chief was in here, we were talking about dog bylaws.
Sure.
So this is purchases.
Good evening. So Diane showed me that you folks have the packet that I presented several weeks ago.
Yes.
So starting at the top with our fiscal year 2019 capital requests. This year, we are requesting to replace roughly half of our Motorola portable radios. Our officers' portable radios have exceeded their life expectancy, which has been highlighted by the approximately $2,000 we have spent repairs during 2017. We are requesting $40,000 to replace 15 portable radios over the next 2 years, $18,200 in fiscal year 19 to replace 7 units, at $2,600 roughly per unit, and $21,800 in fiscal year 20 to replace the remaining 8 units at an estimated $2,725 per unit. I attached the price quotes that we received from our vendor. The price quotes are on the state bid list.
You're just you want to do two, instead of doing them all at once, you want to split it into 2 years, is that, or some better shape than others, so you don't need to do them all at once?
Well, we actually, because of the fiscal climate, we kind of discussed this with capital, and we decided to offset some of the purchases until next year.
But you're requesting the full amount now, and then you'll spend it over 2 years? Is that the idea?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Chief, what's the life expectancy of the radios that we're replacing?
Typically, they're 3 to 5 years, and we are roughly into about 7 years now on our portable radios.
Okay. I think when Chief Kinney was in here and talking about replacing some radios, I know he said some of the older radios can go to CM&D for extra ones, or ones for plow drivers who might be vendors, that kind of thing. Are any of these still usable? Do we get any further life out of them, or are they pretty much shot?
We actually discussed that with Sean as an option for his capital plan. However, my understanding, after speaking with Sean, is that our subject matter expert, George Voorhees, didn't feel that that was such a wonderful idea.
Okay.
Would you agree?
Yeah, not that they can't use it, but typically, when the police are done with the radio, it looks like a truck around.
Right.
Every day.
Well, that's why I asked the question, yeah.
They're not real gentle. So, not that I won't use them or try to use them, but when they're that far out of warranty, Motorola's not even servicing the old 1250s.
Mhm.
You call them and say a 1250's dead, and they say, we'll sell it on eBay. You can't even send it back. So, that's what they'd be handing out. We might be able to use them, but as soon as the battery's cooked, as soon as it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Thank you.
And also George explained that technology has changed, so I think that's also a lot of the issues, so.
Right.
Any other questions about the portables? No. The second capital.
Just one second on here.
Sure.
On the warrant list, David, you have it at 18.5. Does that mean, so it's in the warrant, is it 18.5 or the 40? All right, I
Let's
just
look
want to
at the
make sure we
warrant.
have the right numbers in here before we.
I think the warrant is just fiscal year 19.
Right, so so next year you'll come back and ask for the
Well, I don't
other
think that,
one.
I thought that wasn't the
That-
plan.
that- yeah,
I
exactly,
thought
that's
the plan
why.
was to get it voted this year.
Because right here in the warrant, we have it listed at 18,500.
Yeah, I thought the thought process was just to ask for it up front, and then
Yeah, I think I came up with that.
you did. It was a great idea, Mr. Williams, thank you.
It's just not in here like this, David.
It's not in there like
And
that.
then 18.5.
I don't know why that is, but it's not in there.
Yeah, let me think about that.
Because I think it's the same with the next few items as well. The one that you asked for this stuff up front, but the warrant only includes the amount for 2019.
But that's fixable because the chart is below the line, so that we can amend that. It's not actually part of the warrant article. The warrant article just says to do capital projects, and then below the line being the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, we just want to fix it before
Okay,
Saturday.
if we can fix that, that's great.
What do you think, Jeff? I mean, what have you guys said on capital?
Budget voted on a total police budget of 113,850 for capital, which includes 18.5 for the radios, and it's an annual amount for the tasers. He's gonna get to that in a minute.
Yeah, and I can explain that, yeah.
Jeff, what was the total number?
113,850.
So then it doesn't include the 40, it includes the 18.
Correct.
So you're recommending not to,
We can just review what was proposed, and we could certainly,
Ye-
authorize the full amount. We've
Okay.
actually talked about putting the whole amount, combining them all this year too, but.
It just makes sense, I think it makes sense to put the full amount in, and then you've got that behind you. I mean, you know you're gonna have the radios. If you can spread out the spending, that's better for the town, but.
Trying to be nice, I don't know.
You don't have to, then you don't have to come back and ask for it again next year.
Right, we don't have to, it's not enough money to
Right.
spend a lot of additional time at town meeting talking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
do it
have
in one swell swoop.
you have to make the same presentation twice.
It's okay. I like talking on TV, it's fun.
We need to amend this to 40.
Well, last week, we said that we put in an amount for town buildings. We said it couldn't go up, but it could only go down. Now that you see, Paul, I'm talking to you. Now that we see this in a chart with the 400, that should be okay to go up or down?
Yes, because again, it's below the line. It's not part of the warrant article. So it's only an informational chart.
Okay, all right.
You can go up.
Okay.
We should try in future years to try to be discussing this a lot sooner than
Well, I
2 days
think,
before the.
yeah, I think we
Public
did,
hearing,
we had
so
some
I mean-
false starts, I know.
I know there was weather related, but I'm
Chief schedule,
saying.
Our schedule, the
you know,
weather, I mean.
A couple of
it
months,
got
we've got to
complicated.
try to get it done in February if we can.
Actually, the plan is to do this in late August, early September, because there's no reason the routine items can't go through the capital budget and be approved at that time. And then you'd only deal with some sort of anomaly that might come up after that.
Okay.
We can
ta-
still fix it all. It's all fixable.
So tasers.
What's the total 41?
40,000, exactly
40,
right.
yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, it's funny, this says 18.5, and the write-up here says 18.2, but they actually want 40, so, I mean, I think if we put 40 down, that's probably the right number. Otherwise, you have 300 extra bucks to save for next year. Okay, tasers.
Tasers. So our electronic control devices, which are manufactured by Axon, which is formerly Taser, are outdated. They're no longer manufactured, and they're no longer supported by the manufacturer and must be replaced. We have worked with Axon to purchase new ECDs, associated holsters and cartridges, as well as supporting software at a total cost of $26,000. An impact of $5,100 in fiscal year 19, and an approximately 5% increase per year in fiscal year 20, fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22, and fiscal year 23. We had a long conversation about this with Capital, and there was, we had some talk. Actually, Jeff, you had asked the question, I think, about the cost benefit, purchasing up front versus how we kind of worked this deal out with Axon Taser. And it actually made more fiscal sense to spread the cost out over 5 years. So that's what we did with Axon Taser.
Okay, so there's another one where we'd want to amend this to 26,000, so we've got the
Get it
the
approved.
amount approved, and you can
Right.
spend it over time.
Correct. And how many tasers is this? What's the quantity?
15. 14. 14.
So that's the same with the radios, it would be 18.5 a year? Or is that gonna be all 40 up front?
All 40 up front.
It is, okay, that one's different.
Gonna
then,
vote on
okay.
40, but he's gonna spend 18.5 in 19, and then
Oh.
21.8 in, excuse me, in fiscal year
FY
20.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? The next capital item, or items, I should say, we need to replace our Dell desktop computers, and our former, it says our information technology expert, it's our former information technology expert, Officer Ben Stickney, who now works for the Hopkinton Police Department, created a computer replacement schedule for the town 2 years ago, which would have required the replacement of 3 desktop computers in fiscal year 19. However, we recently learned that our operating system, Windows 7, will no longer be supported by Microsoft by 2020, and our computer-aided dispatch system vendor, Tritech Perform, will not support Windows 7. So our computer-aided dispatch system has to be able to communicate basically with our computers. Officer Stickney worked with Dell and our government representatives on state bid to replace 6 of our desktop computers and the associated supported hardware and software in fiscal year 19 at a cost of $6,000, or 6 units at $1,000 per unit, and the remaining 5 desktop computers in fiscal year 20 at an estimated cost of $5,500. Additionally, we will be purchasing an antivirus upgrade for $900 for a 3-year term, and $620 for a one-time license fee. Lastly, we are requesting $1,900, a shared cost with the fire department, to purchase data backup software for our shared information storage.
This looks again like a number that needs to be changed, the 14,920.
Again, did capital budget consider
We wouldn't have considered all of them.
didn't consider any of these?
I think they considered the numbers they were given in this
in this
chart, right?
No. The chart's a reflection of what was considered.
We just considered the 9420. I'm looking at what's not included, and that's what I'm looking for.
All right, well, Paul says it's fixable, so let's just keep moving through and figure we'll fix it.
Well, I'm just getting curious as to whether, with all of these fixes, capital is still supporting all of these.
Yes, we definitely will.
So far, it's another
We
47,000.
voted on the one-year amount this morning. We're meeting again next week.
Will you guys be together on Saturday?
No, I'm the only one.
You're the only one.
All right. Okay, so emergency response equipment.
Sure, emergency response equipment. We identified critical protective equipment needs during a peaceful demonstration we managed at our Peace Abbey in 2017. Our officers are not equipped with appropriate protective gear should we encounter a non-peaceful gathering in town or respond to assist a surrounding community with a non-peaceful gathering. Additionally, we do not have appropriate protective gear for us to respond to an active shooter situation in town, or if we are asked to respond to an active shooter situation in the surrounding community, which occurred in Framingham in 2017. Lastly, we have identified the need to have an additional less lethal option when confronted with an armed person. Therefore, we are requesting $850 to purchase 4 protective riot shields to be placed in shift-assigned police vehicles, and $5,924 to purchase 15 protective ballistic/riot helmets with face shields for each individual officer. We are requesting $4,241 to purchase 2 Level 3A ballistic bullet-resistant body shields to be assigned to our 2 patrol vehicles, as well as $7,000 roughly to purchase 15 active shooter response kits for each individual officer. And lastly, we are requesting $4,193 to purchase 5 new less lethal shotguns, as well as accessories to upfit shotguns to accept less lethal ammunition. We believe that all aforementioned equipment have beyond a 10-year life expectancy and can be considered a one-time purchase.
What's less lethal ammunition?
Less lethal would be what you would call a super sock. It's a projectile that is basically a beanbag, and it would be something that we could use rather than having to use lethal force against somebody.
So these numbers are not the same either.
Right.
I'm not sure, this one doesn't look like it was the same issue, but
This just looks, the,
if it totals up to 22,018, we should be requesting that amount.
yeah, in the warrant it says 20,850, so
That might be an old number.
I assume Rick's number is correct.
Yeah, I had generated a report that I had to change, and you should have the most recent update. I brought it over to town hall, so I don't.
I mean, I think we do have a.
Yeah, we have this report, but I'm saying the warrant never, I don't think, was updated to
So
the,
I think somebody might have been looking at an old report when they filled out the warrant, I guess.
Okay.
So can I ask you a question about some of the stuff you're
Sure.
getting? 15 of some of those, and that makes sense because that's the whole force, basically. But some of them you're getting 2 or you're getting 4. And I mean, is that, do you need more? I mean, is this, are you going in here on sort of the frugal plan because of that? Or is this something where you can actually adequately stock the department with those numbers?
Yeah, I think these are, this is an adequate
Okay.
request, Mike, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to explain it, because this was asked by Capital, the difference between the ballistic shields versus just basically the regular hard fiberglass. The ballistic shields actually can stop a rifle round. And that would be something that, God forbid we ever had to respond to an active shooter in a school situation, or, somebody decided to come into town hall and try to harm people. It gives our officers the option, or a very needed, important piece of protective equipment. They can actually hold the shield up and, defend against a rifle round.
That's what I'm saying, you only need 2 of those, you think?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
4, you have 4 in here, right?
Though those are
Oh.
those are more
Oh,
to protect
I
from
see.
projectiles and whatnot, a
Bombs
riot,
and that
so to
kind-
speak,
yeah, that kind of
correct,
stuff.
correct.
All right, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
And next, I guess the last thing is the cruiser, right, which I believe we talked about before, but go ahead.
Sure, and actually I'm going to have Lieutenant Bento go through that, because it's a replacement cruiser for his needs, so
Okay,
have at it, Lieutenant.
so this is to replace a 2010 Ford Expedition that's currently assigned to me and utilized for patrol, as well as special assignment that I conduct commercial vehicle enforcement. So it has larger and more equipment than some of the other cruisers, so the larger vehicle fits that need better. The Chevy Tahoe is the only vehicle that size that's a pursuit-rated all-wheel drive vehicle. We currently have one in our fleet. That's a 2015. So to purchase the vehicle and then also outfit it with the emergency equipment, lights, radio, as well as the box for the back that would store weapons, as well as truck scales, truck equipment, the total comes to $60,000. The current mileage on the vehicle we have is 95 and counting, so, and the maintenance is starting to add up as well.
Anybody have any questions on those?
How does that fit into the planned vehicle replacement? So wasn't it like one year you have 2 cruisers, and another year you have 1 cruiser, and then you have...
Yes, the
this
equipment, the cruiser repair that the chief submitted, I think a year or 2 ago, had this vehicle marked for fiscal 19, and it's a one-vehicle year. So we specifically put the more expensive vehicle on the year that there was only one vehicle.
And all the scale and all that other stuff, that's not something you can move out of the old vehicle and put in the new one?
The scales will move over, but the storage box that we actually have, I actually built with Officer Stickney out of plywood and 2x4s. So it's
So
it's
this will
not-
have an actual built-in?
This is an actual box that's something we can secure, and it's also designed to hold the scales properly so that they don't, have any problems from banging around in the back of the vehicle. Those are very expensive. Those are about $20,000 just for the scales. And then the box will also be able to secure the less lethal options, the patrol rifle, things like that.
So we want to take a vote on this, guys?
His capital budget was in favor of all of this.
Do we want to vote on this item, or do we want to go through the whole warrant and vote on everything in order?
I think we've been doing it in the past.
Well, no,
We
we've voted,
on
we've
the
already,
capitals.
we've already included everything on the warrant.
Well, but I think
right?
we also, did we vote to support the capital too, or not?
No, we haven't voted to support anything yet.
Okay.
We only voted to include things
Put
on
it
the
on?
warrant.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
All right, so if we haven't been voting any of it, then we'll vote it all tonight.
Can I ask one quick question? On the computer systems, I see that the bid includes monitors. How, can we reuse them, current monitors? I mean, it's about, I don't know, a couple $1,000s for the 11 units.
That was asked to Officer Stickney the last time, and I believe he said we did not replace them the last time around, so.
And it's time.
Yeah,
They're-
they're about 10, 12 years old,
Yeah, that sounds about,
yeah.
I don't replace my monitor every time, but
No.
yeah, 10 years is probably about right. Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much. Okay, so next on this agenda is town buildings. Sean Colleen.
You want to pull this sheet out?
Oh, yeah.
You guys have that new sheet?
This one? The colorful one?
Yeah.
Mike has it, I left it upstairs.
Some of us are having to pay to look at it.
Did you get that?
I just got it from
You need it? No, keep it, I got one.
I don't know what you did to yours, Paul.
What? Is
Wad it up and stick it in your
It's all
pocket.
Chuck's fault.
It didn't look like that, I gave it to you.
that what you thought of my sheet?
Chuck grabbed it, we were tugging in it.
It's got gum stuck to it.
He wanted to charge me to look at it, so I,
All right, Sean, go for it.
So, you'll recall last year, we
You look more awake than the last time I saw you, too.
hardly,
You must have been going nonstop.
I saw
Feel
him at
like it.
6 o'clock on the evening of the storm. He didn't look like he'd had much sleep.
yeah, Mike was cutting limbs off the road, so we wouldn't hit him
Trying to
with
help you
trucks.
guys out, yeah.
With a bow saw, by the way.
That's all I had. I'm not trusted with a chainsaw.
Me neither.
So,
I offered to Mike to use my chainsaw, but he turned me down,
I
so.
like
Yeah,
my
no.
arms and my fingers.
let's just keep a bow saw in his hand. So 2018, you'll remember we approved $505,000 to put towards about $1.2 million worth of projects that were identified in the on-site report. Since starting in October, I've, as quickly as possible, started some of those projects identified. Some were time pressing because of, the season. We have an HVAC project that we desperately need to get going on the police station. But certainly none of the 18 projects are completed. They're started. So we've been looking at this various ways because we need to carry into 2019 with more projects, obviously, and account for the projects we had. So this, essentially what I did with capital budget was 6 separate sheets that showed both the different buildings and then the shared campus, almost as another facility. And then Eric Siri actually jumped them all together. The net between both years ended up being about $1 million of projects that, in varying stages. Both the approved from last year, the need to do now in 19. And when I say need to do it, there's several projects in here that coincide with the library construction. There was always lighting and some campus stuff that was gonna be done after the library. And now with the increased work going on at town campus, there's obviously some synergy in, if you're gonna replace, if the library's gonna replace 50% of the parking lot, it would be ridiculous for us not to pick up and, you know, do the other portions of it. Even though they were 2 years out on the capital plan, they should be done now. We all know that there was improvements to the well, and there's gonna be more. So there's several different projects in there that most definitely need to be included. And then what I did is I kind of pushed some into the 2020, kind of to show that, you know, there's more stacked up here than just the 400 that you guys settled on the other day, or the not to exceed. It's a fine number, but it's certainly not the end of it.
So before us tonight is the column entitled 2019,
Yes,
400,000.
yeah. The list itself includes everything approved for 18 plus what I'm basically proposing. And again, projects like this don't always, it's not just a clean break at a fiscal year where you can say, okay, I'll start this project. So it wasn't really feasible to take the dollar amount and just say, okay, this was here and this was here. You haven't spent this, you have spent that, because they're gonna roll right through between fiscal years.
How much did we appropriate for this last year?
505.
505.
That's what I'm showing in the
Right.
18.
And how much of that have we spent so far?
Right now about 100, but
Okay.
it's a moving target.
Understood. No, I just wanted to understand, so some of that'll carry over, but for these projects that have already been identified, you need another 400 to do the rest of it.
Exactly. And it's not so much that we'll drain the 400 down by the end of 19. It's that, you know, some of these are public bid projects. You need to have that funding approved.
Good to know.
It may very well be that in April of 2019, I kick off the last project and I wouldn't have spent it, but I don't have the authority to even put it out to bid and approve the project if the funding isn't there.
John, can I ask you about the timing on the well repairs is listed as completed already, but there's 70,000 to be paid in FY 2019. Have we simply delayed the billing on it, or if the work's already been done, give me the timing on that one?
It depends how finance and capital wants to pay for some of that.
So the
It was
cost
a
of-
capital improvement to that well, but I can't show that it was approved in 18, although the funding's there. Again, that
Okay.
kind of speaks to the fungibility of these
Right, and
approvals.
the
It's not a
timing-
fixed dollar amount
Right.
per project.
And the timing doesn't fit perfectly into fiscal year
Right.
constraints, so.
So you're looking
And
for the
again,
second-
if that were to fall off and we say, well, there's a different funding, we're going to pull that from reserve fund,
Right,
that's fine.
right.
But there's still contingencies that need to be carried.
But this is the
and there's-
second year of a 2-year plan, which consists of all these projects except the ones you push.
Exactly. And we intend that this is the last time we go through this process, because this process isn't set up. The way capital budget has this process is really good for single projects. We intend to work towards this being the last version of doing it this way, and we get into a capital stabilization fund for the facility, so we're not constantly doing this, which was similar to what we did. We didn't set one up for Pine Hill, but remember, Pine Hill came with a 3 to 5 year plan, and it was more of just how do we want to do that at town meeting? Do we want to approve the big number and let it roll over 3 years? We didn't. We ended up, I think we did 3 consecutive years, but it became somewhat routine. It'll be much more routine if we do the stabilization fund and we have a running order of the the bigger projects. It was very well laid out in the on-site reports that we kind of combed through last year of how to do that, and it's very visible once you set it up.
So these are all taken straight off of the on-site report?
Somewhat, yeah, they've been tailored to some real-time changes now. Certainly a lot of the campus stuff was moved around. Like I said, the paving, we wouldn't have been putting parking lot paving this year for the town campus, but
Right.
it's half ripped up now and it's gonna be more, so. Not that we're covering the library, it's that the library's gonna pave half of it, we should pave the other half now.
Right, right.
The column, the third column, items that you pushed to 2020, is that all you're expecting in 2020, or is that just the items
No.
that you pushed?
That's what I was putting in the 19, but I'm comfortable in saying those,
Those will
those
go
things
to
can
20,
push on top
along
of.
with whatever
any
else
other
was on
things.
the inside. Do you have any recollection how much that's gonna be in 2020? Because if I remember right, that report showed that, those first few years are gonna be a high number, and then it's gonna drop off.
I thought
to-
the year 3 was like 600.
Was it that
It was
high?
definitely lower. Yeah, the first year was 1.2 million, and then the second was,
Well,
Yeah, but we only
Right.
funded 505.
We only did 5 of it, yeah.
Right.
So we're only catching up to year 1 right
So,
now.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
year 2 is actually.
So one way to look at it is we're playing
Yeah.
catch-up.
Right, okay.
Sean, what are these numbers, these codes here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
oh,
Is that just?
I'm sorry, that doesn't show up here. I think it shows up on,
It's your individual sheets, I think.
it, here. There's the top of the column.
Oh, okay, I see.
Ignore what the rest of the sheet shows.
All right, so, current threat to health and safety, improve to avoid costly repair, replace to maintain service levels. Okay, so these are your rationales for
Exactly.
why you're doing each of these.
Yeah, that's coming right out of the capital. And
Okay.
again,
That
it
makes
didn't
sense.
show up because this was a cut and paste that Eric did off of these individual sheets.
And then, Sean, one question, because we talked a little bit about the well repairs earlier, right? So we've got well repairs that have been put on the building account already this year, right? Based on how Sharon's accounting for them. We're gonna talk to the library about those well repairs, and then you've included them for an appropriation for this year.
Yeah, and so those are one and the same.
I know, I understand that, so that's what I'm saying, so that's gonna be a little bit of an explanation as to how they could be done already. We've got 2 places where we wanna pay for them, and then we're gonna ask town meeting for money for them now. That's
Right.
because you've really moved money from 18 into 19 and vice versa.
Yeah, 18's gonna come up, yeah, by town meeting. But again, you don't always spend your capital in a year. Sometimes it takes 2 years to do a project. But, so that's why it's a little, it's a little murky when we're talking a year after year after year for some of the same,
Right.
not the exact same line item projects, but, some of them move and push. But that was the intent of the way it was worded last year at town meeting. It didn't pigeonhole an exact number for a project.
I think the question is, did the well repair get paid out of operating?
Right now, it has been.
Oh, and you're saying, so then the operating account would be reambused by this capital item?
It needs to be reimbursed by
Or
something.
by some
Or by
other
some, yeah,
source.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Has
then
cap-
we have options.
Needs to be backed out of where it
Yes,
is.
Yes.
exactly. So you'll get that back in your operating budget once, if we approve this, or if the town approves this,
Or
or
reserve-
through
yeah.
other.
Or it just becomes a reserve
Right.
fund transfer, but it's.
Right, there used to be a guy named Colleen up here who would have asked that question at town meeting or at a meeting like this, so I felt like I had to ask it, and we're gonna have to get it answered for town meeting, so, just wanna make sure we're thinking about how to explain that if it comes up.
That guy won't ask that question.
I know he will, not this year.
Apparently, he's gonna have a pretty good answer for it when we get there.
Good.
Sean, is
And since you asked about the well, I don't know if you were headed there, there's another line item there.
Yep.
And that's not to confuse people. There's more improvements to be made to the system that I don't know that we ever would've got around to it, but DEP's been asking us to do it for a decade.
Okay,
And as we go sweeping through there with an excavator, there's a bunker there with like a 1,000-gallon water tank that was never removed, and piping underground, we don't know where it is. That's just kind of a nightmare waiting to happen, so we're gonna make it happen and fix it.
Has capital budget voted on this request?
Well, no, this is the only one we didn't vote on, because this didn't exist this morning.
We-
This is what it did today. So we're gonna vote on this, we're not,
We-
we'll vote on it until next week.
We've been working on how to lay it out.
Yeah.
Really, we kind of presented it one way, the other, this, you can give infinite detail, not so much.
Well, I can report that the item 5 on the chart under Article 10 is 400,000, which matches the number that you're looking for, so congratulations. It's one of the
Ironically.
few matches.
I think that was the bogey.
achieved.
It was.
Yeah.
Because these numbers actually match the whiteboard in my office that's about 30 items deep, so how they landed that good.
But when we get to town meeting, and even the Saturday meeting, it does make sense to break this 400 down into components and to have a presentation about why these items are needed in some detail. Like you have an item for, I don't know, I'll just pick anyone, HVAC controls at town buildings. It would make sense as part of your presentation to walk down the 12 or 13 items with a very brief description of what is it, so that the voters and the viewers on TV can understand what are they being asked to spend and what does it accomplish.
Right. And we have all those. What we've spent our time doing was landing on how, a number for the projects and basically how to move it forward. Because there was some discussion with capital budget of, do we break it off and make the motion to repurpose what's left of the money or not, and how to present that? Are you presenting $1 million worth of project? We finally landed on the best way is to show the 505,
For the,
show the 400, so it, because again, I had a lot of projects, I have a few, it's somewhat fluid. So we finally have it nailed down on that sheet. I think that everyone understands it,
for the
and then
200,
the descriptions can be added into that.
for the 2018 appropriations, those were all free cash, right?
We were,
Yeah, yep,
So we're not dealing with borrowed money or
no,
an
all free
debt
cash.
exclusion or anything like that, just all free cash.
Yes, I have it right here.
So that's easy to repurpose if we need to.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think for town meeting, Sharon, you're gonna wanna be able to explain out of 2018, how far you've gotten on the projects that we thought were gonna be 2018, what you had to add to 2018 because it jumped the queue, basically, like the well stuff. And then 2019, in other words, I think there's at least three columns, maybe even 4 columns in terms of how you explain it, because you've got stuff that they've already seen, they've got stuff that you've spent that they haven't seen, and you've got stuff that they're gonna see for the first time that you're gonna spend next year. So
therein lies how I could really confuse everyone at town meeting,
Maybe.
including you.
maybe, I don't know. I think maybe.
It's been confusing for the past month for me to be able to present it to capital budget.
Yeah, maybe you and David kind of
And-
work through on how to do that.
Right.
one of the things we talked about this morning is bundling these a little bit more, because you see particularly like the fire station, there's a bunch of $5,000 and $10,000 items. I think we can bundle them into what's called exterior repairs, or,
Right.
I'm not sure
Or
what
like the door,
it is, but
include painting the doors with the doors, like,
I think some of this is probably what we need to have for a central project, but we can aggregate a little bit and
or like
not show.
the well piping could be included with the well. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
I
think
think
people need to know some of the minute details when you're making a presentation.
Right.
These bats are costing us plenty.
What's that?
The bats
Bats.
are costing us plenty, the bat intrusion, the bat cleanup.
They are.
There's always been bats in this building.
They're
Yeah.
special bats.
They used to be radioactive. They were.
All right. We good with this?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks, Sean.
Well, what did we decide on supporting or not
We're
supporting?
gonna vote on all,
We're
we're gonna go through the whole
We're gonna hear
warrant.
from Chief Kenny, then we're gonna go through the warrant.
Okay,
That was the game plan. That was the moral plan. Okay,
But didn't we already hear a presentation from the chief on this?
this is about ALS.
This is not about the.
Oh, okay,
All
oh,
right.
Not
So
in the
yes, we
warrant.
have heard from the chief a couple times, but this is the ALS stuff. It's got two hats.
Yeah, so just an update on the ALS. I had met with Medfield a few times in their ALS committee, as they're trying to map out how they're going to address their need for ALS. Nothing, originally I kind of put an idea or small, quasi plan on the table to do a shared resource. And we threw around some numbers, threw around capabilities, or threw around the possibility of doing it. And by the next time I was able to meet with them, they had found revenue. Their ambulance fund, they don't have a revolving fund for ambulance revenue, but they went back and looked at the numbers of what the ambulance was earning or bringing in, and basically they're going to, the last plan that I heard from them was to reallocate the funds that were generated by the ambulance back into the fire department to allow them to bring in their own or train or hire their own paramedics so that they can go back to the ALS level. Which honestly, if a town has the capability to provide the service and sustain it themselves, I think that's the route to go. You don't have the risk of like what happened to this area or region with Events Medicine closing its doors. Everybody lost their ALS capability. That coupled with the state changing, their credentialing, it hurt us, it hurt Millis, it hurt Medway, it hurt Holliston. All of us, used to be at that intermediate or ALS 1 level. Now it was basically like an unfunded mandate, like you got to change or either drop back to the BLS level. So I think all of us were impacted by that. Some of the towns are, I guess, have options or financially have the ability to take it on in-house. I think Medway's close and Millis are close. But I know us in Holliston, for example, Dover, it's not fiscally feasible. I did run numbers to try to put together for this year's budget to, I looked at all of the pay rates of all the private companies in the region, and even some of the paid departments, which isn't necessarily the number we would look at because we'd be per diem, but just trying to find, what a competitive rate would be, and it's just not fiscally reasonable. The ask would have been somewhere around $200,000 or $250,000 in supplemental money put into the revolving fund to pay for paramedics, and that's just one, per 24-hour period, and that still would be. Still wouldn't know whether or not we would be guaranteed to get ALS recognition, because right now we're in the EMS region that has the least amount of what they call PB waivers, which is a paramedic basic waiver to allow you to be an ALS ambulance with having an EMT basic and a paramedic on board. So most of the, like AMR, for example, in Framingham, they have 2 paramedics on every truck, and that's what medical control says they have to do. So with that being the case, there are some probably creative ways around that, but it would be an absolute headache or nightmare to try to map it out. We would still have to keep all of the same agreements we have in place and have another paramedic unit en route, even though we have our own paramedic. So it gets really, I have some issues, and it's a soapbox thing for me. I get frustrated when I think about it, because the way I was able to manage my ALS in Tennessee, it's totally different here, and there's a lot of handcuffs that prevent you from, in my humble opinion, providing the absolute best service to your community. They try to handcuff or micromanage how you provide the service, which, ends up hurting communities like ours and Holliston and other places where, it makes it almost financially impossible to responsibly provide the service. So I've got kind of a strategic plan in place to kind of address some of this, to get us back to at least that advanced level or intermediate level. So the state changed their EMT intermediates. They don't exist anymore. Now it's called an advanced EMT. There's a certain number of extra skills and things that are in the credential now. So What I'm planning to do, we're about to host an EMT class. We've got probably 5 or 6 people in town that are going to take it. And then I want to follow that up in the fall with an advanced EMT course that we'll host as well. So we'll probably be able to fill, I'm anticipating we'll be able to fill the advanced class with just people from town and the department. The EMT class, we've got a good little stable of EMT basics, but we'll have some more, and hopefully that'll help with our availability and coverage. And then in the fall, my plan is, I've already spoke with the company that's doing the EMT class, spoke with them about hosting an advanced class here so that we can boost our numbers up enough to where we'll be able to start that process of getting our ALS 1 level license back. You know, I would love to be at paramedic level, but, you know, I found out today that a lot of the regional companies have bumped their pay levels even higher than what they were. So paramedics are, some, like Patriot, for example, that does, I believe they do Hudson and Marlboro. So those are towns within our district, and that's kind of what I looked at to see what the pay rates were. They're paying brand new paramedics almost $30 an hour. There's no way we can afford to do that. And they also are paying their basics fresh out of school $15 an hour, which that is a stretch for us. I think the numbers that I worked out for us to at least get our pay somewhat competitive was to be in the $14.50 range. But like I have one of my personnel that works per diem for us now that was contemplating leaving, but thank goodness, you know, just being a part of what we have here. She still works a shift every once in a while. But she went into Patriot as an EMT basic and was getting $18 an hour. So, I mean, I know that we can't compete with $20 an hour for a basic. It just doesn't, it's not a feasible thing for us to do. So the idea of us, you know, hosting a training should help us get there. And then another idea that I'm going to try to work and massage.
Can I interject here?
Yes.
Because I've had the discussions with the Selectmen in Medfield, and they start off by saying, isn't Sherborn and its residents better served if they have ALS service? And I think the answer to that is yes. And then they're saying that they don't think that Sherborn has the means or the financial resources or the call volume to achieve that on its own. And it sounds like you're in the process of agreeing with that. And therefore they're saying, why don't we, as a town, ally ourselves with Medfield, which has a larger call volume and so on, and that Medfield would either contract with a private ambulance company that has ALS service that could meet the needs of the Sherborn residents and the Medfield residents and the Dover residents. They're trying to do 3 communities in order to achieve a large call volume. Or Medfield would undertake the expense, given that they have the largest call volume of the 3 communities, to build its own in-house ALS capability on the theory that Sherborn and Dover would contribute towards that, the cost of getting ALS service. And the response has been so far, the message they've gotten so far is that Sherborn wants to go alone on this thing, was the first point. And the second point was that Sherborn has the ability through mutual aid to call on ALS services from some of the bigger municipalities to our north, like Framingham and Natick, which the other communities feel like they don't have the same response time and availability and all that kind of stuff. Because apparently one of the most important things here is not just the high quality of ALS service, but also the response time.
Yes.
Because if the high quality gets there an hour late after the patient is dead,
Right.
it doesn't help.
Right.
So the idea was prompt response at a higher level. They didn't see that Sherborn would be able to achieve that on its own, so they were making the offer for a regionalization approach that would pool the resources of the three communities. And
Yes.
that's the answer that's the question that they were posing, and they wanted an answer from us as a community and from the Board of Selectmen. Did we want to join with Medfield
Entertain
on this
that.
cost-sharing
Yeah.
thing and get to ALS fairly quickly, or did we still want to go alone?
I think, unfortunately, I know from my knowledge in my specific meetings, the idea of the regional concept was brought to the table by me. It wasn't theirs originally. In their meeting, I was the first one to bring it to the table when I was invited to the meeting. And I brought that to the table and asked about it. And the next time I was brought into the meeting, it seemed the direction that the committee had moved towards was providing their own or building theirs in-house. And what I explained then is it does the town of Sherborn no benefit to pay money into something that's going to be housed in Medfield, because I can pay for an intercept, which is for $250 from Framingham, AMR, or Fallon, which are much closer and have a good response time to us, than to pay probably more than that, or significantly more than that, because that's based on a per call or per need, as opposed to paying into something on an annual basis or a regular basis that's going to bring a resource from farther away. It's really, what I would do then is we already have an automatic or mutual aid agreement with Medfield, with Millis, with all of the surrounding towns. If we need them, we can call them. I would just leave it at that and pay them the intercept fee, as opposed to paying, what potentially would be substantially more, but we still get the same benefit. So in essence, what we would do, we would become an island where we don't have ALS, and the only place we wouldn't have ALS surrounding us is Holliston and Dover. Otherwise, Medfield will have it, Millis is almost there, Ashland already has it, Framingham already has it, Natick already has it, and Fallon has it, so I can call any one of them, which I already currently do. We already have an agreed upon rate, which we pay them. So it would not be fiscally responsible for us to enter into a cost sharing unless we could get a resource in our town that would be even faster than what we already have. And that is not what they were proposing or wanting. So I didn't say no. I would love to do something regional basis, but it would have to be something where it'd be a per call basis, or we would contract with them to take care of the south side of town for ALS responses and just have an added resource at our disposal for the ones we already have agreements with, because the reality is it doesn't enhance our service really at all, except for, you could say, on the south side of town, we'd have a quicker ALS response. But, once Millis is up and running, we'll have them as a resource, so it would be advantageous for us if they do it on their own, because, if they're available, that'll be somebody we call. I would, fiscally speaking, it is an expensive or daunting task to be able to provide that level of service. And, my idea was to do something regional or shared, where I even worked out the numbers per capita, where it would be equal, per person based on population there and here, and Dover, what that number looks like to have to pay paramedics, for example, or to have a paramedic fly car that would handle, the communities and basically roam or stage or be located. Obviously for us to pay money for it, it'd be best if it was located here, but if it's located there, with our proximity of, Natick, Framingham, and Fallon right there in Ashland, and Ashland themselves, if it would make more sense. It doesn't provide an enhancement to our service if we don't have something housed here. Like if it's housed there and they're coming into our town, in many ways we're gonna have a longer response time than what we already do for ALS. What it does is it gives us more resources if they're able to do it, and we continue a mutual aid agreement we already have. It puts us in a position where we're surrounded, and then If AMR happens to be slammed and they don't have a unit, and Fallon's not available, and Natick's not available, and Ashland's not available, then I can call Medfield, or vice versa. You know, depending on location of the call, that's who I call first. You know, I would love for us to be able to sustain or have ALS on our own. I don't see it being, you know, fiscally responsible or us capable of holding that burden. You know, I did speak with Pro EMS about that very subject of kind of having a regional ALS unit, you know, and just the burden of call volume for them to break even is so high. It would have to encompass all three of our communities plus Holliston and Millis. You know, events used to cover Sherborn, Medway, Medfield, Millis, part of Dover, and Holliston. And they still had to close their doors because they couldn't generate enough revenue. So that's the danger, and that's the fear where, and what I shared at the last meeting is that if they have the ability or they found revenue to be able to sustain this service on their own, that is the direction they need to go, because there's always the risk of a private company, no matter what kind of contract you enter into or anything else, of closing their doors and you being left exactly how we are now, where we don't have that primary ALS response that we used to have from events. There's always that risk. Where if you're doing it in-house or you have the capability to do it in-house, you don't have that risk. You know, it's a matter of managing it and taking care of it and being able to provide, sustainably provide the service. And I think, you know, with the numbers they're looking at from the last meeting I was at, it's definitely feasible and financially, fiscally responsible for them to aggressively seek that out. I don't know if that's the direction they're going to go. Obviously, it's a very politically heated argument there.
But they don't think they have enough just by themselves. That's why they want
Yeah.
2 or 3 other communities to be with them.
That's if they go a private direction, they won't have enough. But if they do it on their own, then they'll be able to generate revenue by backing us up, by going to Dover. But those things all generate revenue for them. So they have, from the last meeting I was at, there's money in-house for them to hire one person per shift and have a paramedic on each shift. So they'd have to hire 4 paramedics, basically. It would add 1 person to their roster per day. And, you know, they already, I think, have 1 or 2, or they've got some people willing to go to paramedic school within the department. So their goal was to, or the last meeting, like I said, the last meeting I was at, that was kind of the plan the committee wanted to go forward with. I know there was some discussion from one of the people in the committee about doing it all private and just, you know, paying a private company and just shedding that risk and that responsibility completely onto someone else, which is possible. But the committee never approached me about us being involved in a cost sharing when it came to that. And if they would have, I would have said no. I'm not paying into a private agency that really doesn't enhance our service capability. You know, if it's housed there in Medfield and it's Medfield's, you know, the best thing for us to do and the most fiscally responsible thing for us to do would be to say, okay, I'll pay you the intercept fee. But for me to pay a number as if the service is partly mine and I'm going to get guaranteed response is not accurate and would not be fiscally responsible for us to do. You know, I'd just simply negotiate a intercept fee like we do with Fallon, like we do with AMR, like we do with Ashland, like we do with Natick, and work it out from there.
So Chief, are you looking for something from us tonight, or really more just an update kind of thing?
It was more an update. I mean, I think, you know, I in my discussions with our town manager, with David, just working through, you know, I've kept him up to date when I've been to the meetings and kind of the direction things were leaning, you know, and I've kind of used his guidance along the way, just where we are as a position in town. Would we be interested in a regional approach? And absolutely we were, and would be. But it would have to be something that was closely monitored and that would be fiscally manageable and responsible for us, but also truly offer us an enhanced level of service. So if I measure that and look at that, you know, that means there should be a resource somewhere in close proximity to us in order for that to be worth the value of paying into something like that. And if it's not, then the intercept fee is the best route for us to go, because that's $250, or it may be more, but even if it was $500, that's only when we need them. It's not I'm paying for it no matter what, and I'm just paying a fee, and I may or may not reap the benefits of that, you know.
And actually having intercept agreements with 4 or 5 towns.
Right.
Allows you to call Medfield for
Right,
south side of Sherborn to
right,
Ashland.
right. And it also keeps us from being in a position that Medfield faces now, which, you know, they're not as, I guess, fortunate to be surrounded like we are with larger organizations that have multiple units. So when they call Norfolk or Westwood, for example, and they do it all the time and regularly, it becomes a problem. It becomes financially irresponsible of those towns to say, okay, I'm not coming as your intercept service. I can't afford to do that. But we're only doing it, you know, we're doing it, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but we spread it amongst 5 or 6 different agencies. That means Natick's maybe come to us 3 times this year. You know, primarily it's Fallon and AMR that do it, they take care of it. I think Ashland's come to us twice this whole year. So from a community, you know, standpoint, we're not putting an undue burden on any of our neighbors. You know, it's a good shared relationship.
Okay.
This thing was on the agenda at the request of the Medfield Board of Selectmen. It sent me an email which I had forwarded to at least Mike, maybe to the rest of the board. They wanted some kind of official reaction from this board as to whether or not we would enter into a regional agreement with Medfield. And
Sounds like the answer is the chief's advising
Based
us not
based on the
to.
chief's advice, I'd say no then.
Yeah, no, I think it's a terrific presentation of the issues, and
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, it's just the parameters that are off. Like, would we be interested in a regional type of service? Absolutely, but, you know, we would have to have a little more oversight and control instead of it just being, okay, well, how's everything here? We're going to manage everything here, and we'll respond to you. Well, that's no different than what I have now, so why would I pay for that?
Right. It doesn't improve the response time,
Right.
so why do it?
So is a fair way to respond here to say, you know, based on the advice of the chief, we're gonna support him in the program he's proposed and encourage him to continue dialogue with Medfield to see, you know, if things change? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, do we want to take a sense of the board, just take a vote on something like that?
yeah, I think that would be
All right, so
good
somebody wanna
community relations with
Do a so
Medfield.
moved and we can,
So moved.
Second.
all right, further discussion? All in favor? All right, okay, so now we've got some direction, somebody can get back to the Medfield Selectmen and tell them, we heard the presentation, we thought about it, and
Who do you want to get back to them? You want Aaron, Paul, or me?
I don't care. Can we put stuff on their agenda now too, or no?
We can try.
Can we win a basketball game in Medfield?
Thank
All
you,
right.
chief.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, hey, John, we're gonna take you out of order since you've been patient and you're trying to spend money. And then, after we're done with all the money spending, then we'll go through the rest of this. Okay. So you wanna come up? This is something you had flagged, I think, a little while ago, at least me. I don't know if you've ever been in front of the board on this, I can't remember.
I think I saw some memos on this. It's pretty much of a no-brainer. So
Right.
before you go through a long presentation on this, we've all seen it before.
I think what John wants is some money now, so why don't you tell us what you want the money for?
Sure. For the general plan, this year we've got some money set aside for printing. Now we need some help to do the layout, because we're spending a lot of our board members' time doing layout when we should be finishing the writing of the implementation plan. So we've got quotes from several different contractors who do this sort of thing. And the open space plan has the same issue, where Gino supports both, the open space committee, the open space plan writing and the general plan writing. We started going down the road of putting in a request for money in our next year budget. We met with advisory, and the planning board discussed it, and we came up with the idea of doing this instead, because this is where we get the money now, where we want to spend it now. If we go through a request for money in next year's budget, then we have to actually wait to finish the general plan until the money's available.
So John, just a question here. This is gonna be somebody who formats it for a print copy, you know, I read a lot of general plans from around the country, and a lot of them now are online based, so you're
Right.
not printing them out, and they have links within the plan, so if you go on the website,
Right.
you wanna link to chapter 4, because it's mentioned in chapter 2, it'll take you there.
Right.
Are we gonna do that?
Yep, we're gonna do both. Our plan is to print 30 copies.
Okay,
So we have 30 copies for the next, until we do this again.
John, do we have an estimate
but
of
if,
how
but
many
if,
hours?
no, but if it's online as a
Right.
PDF, anybody can make a copy if they want
That's
a
right.
copy.
Yep.
Or they can download it to their own computer, read at their leisure, whatever they
Right.
want.
Yep, no, we very much want an electronic copy where we can,
Okay, good, so it'll be
Links
formatted though
and-
for a web presentation?
Yep.
Basically, okay.
John, do we have an estimate of how many hours of professional services are involved in this formatting? What are we buying for the $10,000?
yeah, we did.
8,000.
Well, 8,000 plus the 2 he was
Plus the
already
two we've
budgeted.
already, right?
Yeah,
It's a total of 10.
I can back that up. Yes, we have an estimate.
It sounds like they got bids from 3 places, right? I mean.
Yeah, we actually spoke to somebody in town who's in the business, who's not bidding on it, and came up with a scope of work that works for their profession. And then we've got bids from, I think, 4 different contractors. We'd like to pick, we've got one that seems to be the most familiar with our specific type of work.
I'm sorry, so you have 3 or 4 bids?
I think we have 4.
Right.
And same thing, the printing, I think that was 21 cents a page, I think, with binding and cover and things like that. But we're only planning 30 copies with an electronic version that's,
I'll move to approve this reserve fund transfer.
Second?
Okay, all in favor? Great, thank you, John.
thank you. Thanks very
Great,
much.
we're looking forward to it.
We all are,
Okay.
thanks.
Are we going to get autographed copies? So-
There's only 30, so,
Use your blue pens. Red.
Because, John, I don't want one.
you want the autograph?
Chuck hasn't finished reading the 1990 plan yet.
It's the autograph, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Ides of March. Okay. Here you go. Okay, so next, I think we were gonna walk through this,
warrant?
We do
It's
the one
warrant,
day
right?
equalizing.
well, we'll do that after we're done. There's nobody here for that. I hope. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it Saturday.
Okay. All right, so, you know, we can do the same thing that Mary's planning on doing and have
Consent agenda.
a consent agenda, bundled some of these because we don't typically make recommendations. Should we just start with with number 10?
Start with, I think we should probably vote the omnibus budget separate, because I
Okay.
think maybe go Articles 1 through 8. That's a,
So 1 through 8
Consent.
as a consent, okay. Do we know how much they're proposing to transfer to stabilization? Or is that to be determined?
Let's see.
It's the council on aging one.
no,
No.
special
50,000.
education,
OPEB.
50,000 is what,
oh, yeah, OPEB, that's right.
OPEB is
It's a
100.
That's
Yeah.
100 like usual, okay.
OPEB's 100, special ed is 50.
There's also,
But the thing is, I reached out to,
This is the one you're talking about, right?
yeah, special ed, they already have 100, and that's kind of their goal, so we're not gonna.
So they're not gonna do
anything.
anything?
Yeah, they're not gonna do anything.
Okay.
We're adding this, council on aging, or elder housing.
I emailed the selectmen earlier about it. It was a late thing. It was done today that there'd be a $25,000 transfer in that article from Elder Housing Capital, from the Elder Housing Revolving Fund to the Elder Housing Capital Stabilization Fund.
Is that the revolving fund article?
Yeah, no, it's under the Stabilization Fund, Article 8.
Oh, okay.
Originally, Elder Housing came in and presented to you as if it was going to be a standalone, separate article, but it's actually done under, we actually can do that under Article 8,
Okay, and it's 25,000?
25,000.
What's the cemetery enlargement fund?
Click on it.
I don't know if it, I don't know what that
David?
is.
I would need Sue
Five.
Tyler to explain the whole thing, but it's for putting aside for the future
Are they asking
enlargement
for
of
money
the-
from the town to do that?
No,
No,
that's.
from-
this is an
It's
annual
it's their
article.
annual
It's
spending.
just their,
out of it.
that's how it's
Right.
phrased, that's what I was wondering, okay.
Their
That's
annual that they do every
effectively
year.
their fees going back into their enlargement.
Right, they take the amount of money they've generated and they transfer it to the budget.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
good,
So
good.
it's-
So it's in the first 8 articles. I'll-
Sometimes they ask for money on top of that, I just want to make sure that's not what's happening.
So
No, it's not-
I
it's not
support
additional.
5.
I'll move for the board to support Articles 1 through 8.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, any
Favorable
discussion?
action on, I should say, move for favorable action on Articles 1 through 8.
Well, we would, yeah, we would just say we would support it,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, all in favor of that, okay. So 4 to nothing on all that. All right, next is the budget, omnibus budget.
Can we hold that to the end?
Let's hold that to the end, good idea.
idea.
Farm pond dock replacement.
Yes.
We heard from folks on that last time, so we have a motion from Paul.
I'd move for favorable action.
Second by Chuck, all in favor?
Can I move approval of all the budget items?
No, I want to vote separate on the capital items. There's
Okay.
one that,
All right, fire engine 6. We've had a presentation on that.
Move approval.
We have a second on.
Second.
just
Okay.
one thing on the discussion on the fire
Discussion.
engines.
Yeah.
I know Chief has made a great presentation on needing both of these. I just feel like 2 fire engines in 1 year is too much for our town. So I think the engine 2 seemed to be more critical. So I'm only going to vote to support engine 2 this year, and I would hope that he would bring back engine 6 next year.
Okay, so moved and seconded, so all in favor on, this is engine 6. So 3 to 1. All opposed if you want it to be recorded, okay. Engine 2, do we have a motion?
Move to support.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye, okay, 4 to nothing. CM&D, this is the,
Well, if that was the only one that George had an issue with, can we move
I-
approval of all?
I can move approval of the rest of the capital. That was the only item that I wanted to.
the only
single
thing
out.
is I want
Oh,
to
we-
make sure we
we
get these
should-
numbers changed.
Right, for the police.
Okay, so does anybody have the numbers that we,
I do.
Yeah,
okay, so
So for-
radios is what?
40,000.
Wait, why does it say 98.6 on this thing? Oh, that's Sean's radios.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody's
And
getting their own
the
radios.
Tasers are 26,000.
All right, so 40, 26. what-
Computers at 14,920.
Okay. Emergency response.
$22,018.
That one I didn't understand why the numbers were different. And then police cruiser is still 60, right?
60,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, all right. So with that, do we have a
I'll
motion?
move to approve, to recommend numbers 3 through 6 on the capital items.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. That's another 4 to nothing. Okay, item number 11, which is the, that's the regional school. We had a presentation on that. It's gonna cost us $233,000.
I'd move
They need a
support.
roof.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? 4 to nothing. Use of free cash, what is this? This is just the typical free cash article?
Yeah, I
We'll get a
haven't-
recommendation from advisory at some point?
Yeah, there's not likely going to be anything on there, so there'd be a take no action.
Oh,
They're not going to need any.
Well, can I
Is that good?
suggest we reserve
Right.
action on this till
that's what I would say. too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait until after the
absolutely.
omnibus.
Skip
So-
that.
Put a hold on that one.
advisories
All right.
leave?
Absolutely.
Collector Hess has a proposal on the collections and permit holds.
Move
Move
approval.
support. Second.
Okay, moving seconded, all in favor. Now, some of these votes are down as 5 to nothing, but I know it's only 4 to nothing.
No, we voted on some
That was okay.
before Sean resigned.
Oh, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, that's why, all
Yep.
right.
Yeah, look at
To
the date.
include them in the art.
Okay, gotcha.
The 2 8s are
Okay,
a lot of money.
amend bylaw to name select board,
I'd move support.
okay, second.
Just under discussion, I was listening to a discussion among representatives of different communities about what to call the Board of Selectmen in this modern age. And a suggestion was made that the consensus was the best name for it was to call it the Executive Board, because that best captured what the function was of the board. It is the chief executive office of the community. Cities have a mayor, towns have these boards of selectmen. And the select board didn't make the cut because some felt that was sort of elitist, some felt it was non-descriptive. It didn't fully describe what was going on. So the suggestion made was the better use was the executive board. I just passed that on for your
I have a
information.
question are other towns doing this, or are we gonna be the only town that's
A lot of towns
select
already
board?
have
Are they
this.
A
already
lot of
have?
towns are doing it,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, a lot of towns already have a select board. All right, so there was a discussion, all in favor on this one? Okay, opposed, abstained. The next one, number 15, are we gonna move to take no action on that?
So moved.
No, that one's, the next one
15
is
was
15.
eliminated, so you have the
Oh,
new
it was
15.
completely, it was completely eliminated,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Right.
Oh, so that, why is this not being carried even on here?
That shouldn't even be on the
No,
list.
15 is removal of elected financial officials.
Right.
Yeah, but for whatever reason,
He has one that's
that one
crossed
was
out.
carried, that
I
shouldn't
put it
be
in there to
carried.
show you that you had eliminated it, so you could have the vote in there. So you
Okay, you just did this to confuse me, David. All right, amend the general bylaws and removal of elected officials. Do we have a proposed
And move support?
motion to support? Do we have a second? I guess I'll second it. Further discussion?
Again, as I said before, I think the remedy, the reason why the state statute was changed was that the state has been recommending for years that towns move to appointed financial officers. Many towns have moved that way. If we are not going to move to appointed financial officers as opposed to presently elected officers, the halfway step is to allow them to be removed by the Board of Selectmen rather than by this awkwardly created once-in-a-lifetime committee. So if this was amended to include the Board of Selectmen as the authority to address these problems, then I could support this, but I don't agree with this.
I just don't support this. Again, last year we didn't support it when I was on advisory.
Yeah, last year I don't think it was ready for prime time. This is a much better crafted, Barbara San Andres modified it.
As she said the other night, though, it really isn't changed. There was a couple of small words changed.
Yeah, but
It's still like
last year it came in at the very last minute.
Okay.
And like advisory, the Board of Selectmen didn't support it either, but I think this is ready for consideration.
So I agree with everything Paul, Chuck, and George have said, but I'm still gonna support it. I see the flaws in it, and I see that it's not the best solution. But I just feel like we need to have, at least try something if there was just, even a slim chance that we had somebody who was, putting us at financial risk, who was an elected official, and we didn't have a way to try to remove them, I think we'd regret it, so.
I think it's too important an issue not to. It may be a halfway
It
step.
may be unworkable, it may create litigation, it may be a second-best solution to having appointed officials, but it's the best we've got this year.
I again would suggest in section 2, simply deleting this.
I don't think
This
we're changing
meeting-
it now. It's just a matter of voting on
Well,
what's
Paul can
there.
make that motion if he wants to, and on the floor or even on Saturday, and if it got support, I would support that. I do think it's a cleaner way to do it. I think this committee is really awkward and really,
That's what I don't, I think
Confusing.
it puts people in a very awkward position with people that they work with, and that was the issue we had with it on advisory last year, and it's still the same issue.
I think the political reality, though, in this town is if the selectmen are viewed as being in a position to remove the treasurer, nobody's gonna trust that mechanism, and
But
so.
that's only for malfeasance and transgressions and all of that stuff, with the hearing, evidence, lawyers.
Understood, but I mean,
all of
this is a historical, I'm just being clear about what I see as the political will of the town. I don't see at this point that the town would support change like that, Paul, but I think it's a good change. I don't think we have the level of confidence from enough people to let them do that.
I'm just saying that I can't support this article as written,
Got it.
but if it was changed, I could support it. That's really all I'm trying to say.
So should we take a vote on it as it is now, and then maybe things will change later?
Yep.
All right, so, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, 2-2.
So
That's
it
good. We
fails.
needed a couple of 2-2s.
Oh, we have a different agenda.
Let's see, dog license penalty. Oh,
Just for
changing-
the record, that meant the vote to approve failed.
Well, it's just a support, it's a
It's a
support.
support. It's
So
on
when
the
they say
warrant.
there's a selectman support, we say, no, it was a 2-2
Say
vote.
it
It
was
was an even split, right?
yeah, a split vote.
Let's see, just amend the dog license penalty, that was just changing the date
To March 1st.
to March 1st.
Support.
Second,
All in favor? Aye, okay. 4-0. Dog control regulation, this is that bylaw that
move approval.
Officer Ted Stone, Sergeant Ted Stone put together. It was
Move
good work.
support.
All in favor? All opposed? 3-1. Okay, accessory apartment bylaws, I don't think we've heard much about any of these bylaws, have we? We heard,
Yeah, there was a
there
presentation.
was, but David said there was a lot of change after that, wasn't there, David, or not?
After their presentations,
No?
they had changed several times, yeah. But
After
I
the
don't,
presentation?
There's,
I can't remember, but I think, yeah, I think there was a couple of changes.
I think there's been,
they actually haven't voted on some of these, planning
the
boards.
planning board hasn't?
Yeah.
And the
I
reason.
think as recently as
they
2
have,
weeks ago.
John had left early, so there's a couple that are, we reviewed this last night at advisory. And we had, citizens, abutters that complained about the two, trying to find the ones. One's
The farm
one's
events
Farm,
and-
farm events and, downtown.
Outdoor entertainment.
Outdoor events,
Yeah.
because, they said the farm events, can be quite noisy, because farms don't have any kind of natural barriers, so we have people in Western Ave that, what's that called, that
Silverwood Farm.
Silverwood Farm.
I guess they
Yep.
wanna have a bunch of weddings there, and people, butters were concerned about.
Those are the abutters who can't hear the soccer games going on at the
I
soccer
don't know
field
what-
constantly?
We had two people attend the advisory
The
last
super
night.
quiet, like, you can hear a pin drop kids soccer games that go on there?
And so what downtown's in the new, regulations for both the downtown events and the farm events is an actual noise definition, number of decibels. So we tried to make it be less subjective and have
So-
an actual.
I
Could
would
I
wait.
suggest that those articles that the planning board has not voted, that we hold
Yeah.
defer?
I don't want to vote on them before they do.
But those articles that the planning board has approved,
Have they approved any of these?
Why don't we
David?
wait on all the zoning board articles
I
till
think you should
Saturday?
wait on all of them and see the presentations, see
I
how
agree.
it's changed.
okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I
we
think
we
waiting
had
till
initial
Saturday.
conversations about all these, they wanna make accessory apartments easier, which is a great idea.
Don't want to
Yeah,
vote on
because
them.
Bunch of
Article
other stuff.
18, I would support.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of stuff here that's a good idea,
It
but
makes sense, and I think they're working with town council a little bit still to.
to make that better, okay.
So let's hold Articles,
So,
18
22.
through 22.
All right, establish a government task force phase 2, we said we'd put this on the ballot. Yeah, I've
I'll
kind of
move,
mixed feelings about whether it's necessary, but
I'll move to support this article.
I'll
What
second.
is that?
moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this one?
23,
23, okay, thank you.
Clerk, any discussion on 23?
no.
Okay, all in favor, 23? Electronic voting, wasn't this something we said they didn't need to do?
No, what we said they didn't need to do, they wanted to discuss it at town meeting.
Oh.
The one that,
Community
the
housing.
Community Housing Trust was the one that we took off because we said they
Because
didn't
we
need
can
to do.
create that.
But I thought for electronic voting, I mean, can't Mary and Carol just do this? Do we have to have the town actually
You can,
say it's okay to do?
but they came in and you had
So this
looked
was,
to
the idea was,
include it.
that Kitty thought it would be better to have people vote on it, right?
Right.
Well,
Okay.
this is to establish a committee.
This,
And so it was a means of testing the voters to see whether that's something they wanted to spend money on.
Well, they always want to establish committees.
You could establish the committee and charge them with that, but the moderator wanted the article in there.
Yeah.
And we were
For
just
discussion.
accommodating her, so
I think the committee should have to vote electronically.
if she wants a committee and she could establish it anyway, I would say let's support
Okay,
what she wants to do.
motion to support, with a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? Okay,
We're at the end of the warrant.
yeah, good.
You gotta go back to the
So what was the
omnibus.
vote on that? 3,
4-0.
I didn't see your vote.
That's because I'm only half-hearted about
I
that.
didn't see somebody
All right, we'll be going back to the
The
budget.
omnibus? I just wanted Sharon, because Sharon spent so much time this year preparing this
Oh.
lovely spreadsheet, just to kind of tell us, I know advisory had a meeting last night, just to update us where we're at overall, so we can see the big picture on the omnibus budget, because I think it's fairly good news, right?
Yeah, we're closer. Right now, we're looking at a, excess capacity of 748,000. And we're looking at probably a estimated tax bill increase of 3%, 3.5%.
Wait, a tax bill increase of 3.5%?
Well, not, I mean, the per thousand, it was 1930, it's gonna go up.
It's gonna go up to what?
They want it to stay below 20.
Why don't they put it below 1930?
Right.
What happened last year?
We haven't quantified it.
Yeah,
What happened last year was, with the debt service number, was not put in there correctly, so we spent well below where the, what's it called, the
the levy.
levy
The
limit.
levy limit,
We were
yeah.
well below the levy limit. So now this year, our levy limit is much higher. So the good thing is they brought it down, so as Sharon said, there's about 750,000 of excess capacity, which means, had we gone all the way up to our levy limit this year,
It would've
that would have been
been-
an unbelievable increase in our tax bills. But they've brought it down to, like I said, 750,000 below what our levy limit is, which is great. I think a lot of the budgets have come down significantly from what the initial ask was. The schools, CM&D, I think a lot of groups have made a great effort here to do
We
this.
haven't decided if we'll fund capital projects with that rather than, if you-
Right, there's still some numbers that move
Yeah.
around.
There's some
Yeah.
numbers on how we would.
But at this point, I mean, I look at the number here where you had the required cuts to get below that because there was the $600,000 piñata, they say. Before, that number was close to, what, 700?
It was,
It was up
yeah.
to,
It
it
was-
was 700,000
it was
on the
way-
opposite
yeah.
side. It's now negative 175 because they've
people-
managed, advisory's done a
Yeah.
good job meeting with these budget makers and getting it.
So Sharon, when you say it's 3%, is that the 3% in the right-hand column? The blue 3%, or is that something different?
It's something different.
All right, so you're talking about
Yeah.
an actual 3% change in the tax rate?
We're
I
gonna,
haven't looked at that yet. With Ben, have you worked on
yeah,
that?
I've been working it with Ben. We're actually gonna get together tomorrow morning if you're
So it's like a
available
30-cent
at 9:30.
change, right?
Well,
More
I
more
was-
than that. It's more like a 60-cent
How much of a drop
change.
was it, though, on the tax rate this last year? It was, it went
was
from.
over $1.
Went from 20.
It was over 5%.
Yeah, it was over 5%
Over 5.
drop last year.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Right,
the-
but our base is bigger. So we're gonna raise the rate on a bigger base. That just seems, I thought the whole reason we were trying to get the base bigger was so we could keep pushing the rate down.
I don't think they find,
No, we
advisory hasn't
haven't.
voted on this.
I mean, 3% is a 60-cent rate hike, right? That's a 60 mil,
It's almost a 70 cents.
yeah, almost 70-cent rate hike. We're barely 70 cents under 20. I don't think it's a win to say we're coming in under 20 still. I just don't see that as a win.
Yeah, the consistent message I'm hearing out there on the street is that they don't want to see a tax increase. They very much like, people who talk to me feel taxes are too high in town. And they very
It's
much
not
like to
because they
see,
talk to you though, Paul, that they feel they're too high. It's just they feel they're too high. Don't take it personally.
the people who talk to me, there may be people out there who want to see the
wanna
taxes
pay
go
more.
up, who
Yeah.
haven't talked to me. But the people who have talked to me want to see it go down.
I guess so.
So the point is, I can't support 3% increase.
I don't think we'll be
We're
able to
not,
close the gap.
yeah, we're not finished yet.
Okay. Well, I think you're hearing though.
I'm saying where they've come from, though.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
look at this, if you can
Oh, I
see
think-
the big picture.
I'm not saying they didn't do great work and haven't squeezed what they can squeeze. I just feel like we
I think what
We shouldn't
happened,
be raising
to be
the
quite
rate
honest, I
70
think
cents.
what happened last year, because of that debt service issue, I think from the treasurer's office last year, the tax rate probably went down further than.
Artificially lower than it
Artificially went
should
down.
have. Down, yeah.
It didn't artificially go down, it really went down, and we spent less
Saying
money.
it shouldn't have gone to the level that it was
Yeah.
at. But,
Because, why? Because we actually undertaxed and we had extra expenses that weren't covered?
We didn't allow enough, we could have, our tax levy limit was higher than we realized.
They can't, yeah, we thought it was gonna be around 300, and then because of this whole,
But that's good, that was a good windfall for us, but that doesn't mean,
No, but we
18
have
and
to decide,
19.
in other words, if we have X amount of funds available that we have paid out of these sort of these budget makers, we can reduce the tax rate or stabilize it. We can also fund some capital projects, which effectively reduce the tax rate by not having them be part of, that's
Right.
not increasing the debt service. So we haven't had this
yeah, we haven't gone
advisory
to that level of
We
detail.
just got through the budget makers and got through. worked out
Plus,
the
last
deal
year,
with the regional schools a week ago. So that was the biggest.
one thing to also consider, one of the numbers that went up significantly this year was the debt service number, because we've been doing all that short-term borrowing and we just bonded it. So now that's gonna, I think it was a good time that we just, to go out to the long-term bond, but the immediate implications of that is we're gonna be paying more debt service in the next few years, but we've now got that long-term bonded and locked in.
so that went up $400,000.
Right.
yes, it did.
But I think long-term planning wise, that was the right move on debt service.
Right.
But temporarily, it's gonna bump
Yeah, it
up
has positives,
spending.
because then your debt, so then you're causing future residents to pay, by being in the
Mhm.
debt service, future residents will benefit from having, we keep our hirings in for 32 years, they're gonna benefit, from having it, so we wanna match some of those people's tax bills.
The other thing that happened
The
last
assets
year,
we're investing in.
yeah, the other thing that happened last year is they had, free cash was certified at like $3.5 million, which was
It was a
really
big-
high.
A big bump, yep.
And we used almost $2 million
Yeah.
of free cash to
Right.
subsidize, you know, not the.
Capital.
Capital and.
And some other warrant
And then
articles.
some warrant, yeah.
What's
so
our free cash this year?
It's still being worked on. I'm working with DOR and our auditors on it. It's not done yet. I can't. It's not done yet.
Is it, do you have a projection on it?
I think it's gonna be about
Over level funded.
2.
Everybody was level
two-
funded. Town
So there's
general,
still
600.
Yes.
like $1 million that we can take to support
Yes, yes.
projects here.
Yeah, and that's what we still
That's
haven't,
what the pinata is.
Sure going to get your,
we haven't,
Well, the 400.
we're just starting to do that now.
400, yeah.
We have
No,
a
the
meeting
debt service is excluded.
Tomorrow with Ben, you'd like to join us.
And then
Okay.
there's Sharon, there's two things that are shaded here. One is the building budget, and one is and it says advisory projection. I don't know what that column exactly means, but that's where they're headed now. And then the snow and ice number.
Oh, that's, I'll unshade it.
Are they
It's just-
shaded because they're still in dispute? What's
No,
the-
no, those are
They
set.
shouldn't be shaded
They
anyway.
shouldn't be shaded. It was just,
The
28
advisory projection is the level funded.
And is
The,
228 the number that Sean ended up with on his buildings budget?
no, the 265 is.
yeah, 265.
Oh, the projection was the old number.
This projection was level funded.
Mm-hmm.
Column M, the department request, is where we're at now with every department.
So, why are we putting 82.9 in snow and ice?
Exactly. That's just what I was looking for, because of that.
That's where we said we were gonna leave it at the same level. The
Yeah.
82.9, it's at 82.9, we're leaving it at 82.9.
You can't go down,
Is 82.9 what we were last time?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
because that's the level funded number, is the 82.
Yeah.
they just put it in.
Yeah,
So we're staying, if you see, it's the same.
Yeah, but there was a
next year.
problem. I think one of the years we were actually below the 82.9. if I remember correctly, from,
No.
that was what, 2 or 3
We
years
never
ago?
budgeted, it's the amount you budget, Chuck, it's not how much you spend.
Sean, you did like a 10-year.
It's okay if we spend below it.
No, it was-
Yeah, but the baseline is on the budget number, that's,
If you actually use present day numbers, we don't, we've never.
Yeah.
You can't roll back 10 years and not.
Yeah, so it's, the appropriation was 82,364 last year.
Right.
Advisory recommended 170.
Right, and we wanted it to stay at the same level.
82.
Right.
Okay.
I spent that last week.
I'm sure you
I know.
did.
Saved a little, I cut a tree.
Yeah.
You got the selectmen out here cutting trees
Yeah.
for you, so.
Well, last year we had a supplemental for snow and ice of 171,000.
Right.
And as of a week ago, we were already at 146.
But we get reimbursed for that anyway, right? In the end? Or for some amount of it?
What's that?
Not unless it's a-
We haven't been told we're getting reimbursed for anything.
Yeah.
We just do at the end of the year, a transfer.
There were no.
Free cash,
free cash.
supplemental,
Governor,
yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, there was no declaration of emergency on any of these storms?
Not any of them. Someone should lean on the governor.
Not yet, there's one more storm coming.
Yeah. We're not done-
Don't wish anything upon us,
As
Paul.
emergency management, I turned in a thing to MEMA, and ended up, everybody in all of the areas in the state that were affected, and turned in a sheet, so I got his calculations, mine, police, and it didn't meet the declaration standard collectively with all of the communities
Yep.
to get it, so.
I think the coastal towns probably.
But the idea is, and we've done this, the state's done, by we, I mean the state has done this in the past, if you combine storms together like we did in 2015, and then add up all the costs for all the communities, we may get over the threshold for presidential declaration. So that's why I said there's one more storm coming. But so far, no, we're not there for reimbursement.
even with 3 nor'easters in 2 weeks.
It might be coming for these last 2 or last 3, because I mean, I kind of stay up on top of the meme updates. We may, especially with the amount of damage that's done to the Cape and the South Shore, I think as a state we'll collectively hit that number. I don't think there's a way we won't. So I'll be doing another list, I'm sure.
I was gonna say, because you can't even have calculated what you spent this week, I would imagine, with all the tree damage and
no.
everything.
I won't have those bills for another month.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
gonna have tree crews in here for a month.
Yeah.
So we need to,
You haven't noticed the trees fell.
so we need to root for another storm, is that what you're telling us?
No.
Call me in a week.
I think the point they're making is that they haven't calculated the last storm,
Yeah, that's,
and therefore, when it's all calculated statewide, we may, if we combine the storms together, and as we did in 2015, and ask the president to consider them all together, we may be there already.
We spent $350,000 in 2015.
I know, but we did get something back on that one.
Yeah.
So I think on the omnibus budget, we should probably wait till Saturday then when we're,
Storm.
yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest, because we need, these are near final, but I don't think they're
right,
final.
they're not final yet, this is what
Right.
Jeff said and
Right.
Sharon, so I think let's be part of the advisory discussion on Saturday and see where it
Well,
goes.
yeah, and I'm with Paul on this. I don't think we should have a budget that raises taxes, and certainly not 70 cents per thousand. That's a big number.
Right.
Okay, so I think the sense, we're all in agreement,
Yep.
Yep.
take no action.
Do you wanna?
So that finishes this,
Yeah, it's
That
great.
part.
Now we have to vote a liquor license. So consideration of a one-day liquor license, is this all in order,
Yes,
Diane?
Well,
So is this for Saturday's
I usually
meeting?
have them send me in a new line.
Should be. That's a good one, Sharon, I like that.
that would make the meeting go very smoothly.
It is St. Patrick's Day after all.
Michael, I have to have them update the liability insurance, so I'll have them do that tomorrow.
The policy they reference is
It
expired.
looked like a 9, but I guess David's telling me.
Vote
it's
it
a-
contingent on receiving,
Yeah.
An updated
is
certificate
a-
of liability with the current policy.
Yeah, besides everything else is
Right.
in order.
This is a library fundraiser, it's in our advantage, it's to the advantage of the town, it's to the advantage of the library, it's to the advantage of the taxpayers that this thing take place. And so, yes, they made a technical error on the insurance policy, but we should approve this subject to
And I'll get a new one tomorrow.
Agreed.
satisfactory payment.
Yep.
Well, I like it because we're getting it 3 weeks before the event, which is like 2 weeks.
Maybe at first.
2 weeks sooner than we usually get it.
I'll second Paul's motion to approve it, subject to getting an updated certificate of liability insurance with the current policy.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor? And I'll be corrected, this thing was actually sent in the beginning of January.
And the permit's right in front of you if you can sign it.
Okay. How about your pen again, George? Yep. You're gonna hold this, Diane, until you see that insurance
Absolutely.
policy.
And I'd like to see the wine list too.
Wine list.
For future applications, include the menu and the,
The menu and the line list.
It's maybe the most important issue.
Okay, so now we've got consideration of payroll warrant, do we have a motion on that?
move approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay.
You have that
we'll
in
do
front of you as well.
I'm signing that one in red.
It's below you.
Oh, that's the library
Sign this?
stuff. No,
Can I give
that's
something?
not it.
That's not it?
No.
Oh, this is the other thing.
Can I give something quick under the town administrator report?
Yeah, please.
I was just gonna say, it's been a very busy 2 weeks for the public safety people, and they've been hanging in with these challenges 24/7. So it has been very difficult and challenging, but I'd like to request a future agenda item just to discuss with the emergency management team and the public safety people, just what we've actually been doing, the challenges they have faced. So, and sort of a lessons learned, and see what we can do moving forward. But things have gone really well.
I agree, there should be an agenda item. I think there is lots of lessons learned and things that we can suggest for improved communications. And I saw a posting on Nextdoor Sherborn about a better way to communicate with residents. I commend, well, the fire chief's here, so I'll commend you, because you're here, and you were cited in there for, that's a good idea, and that's what other communities have been doing for quite a while. And I think Sherborn should do that. During the storm, I had a lot of residents calling me, and I wanted to thank everybody who did call me and tell me what was going on in their section of Sherborn. But I think one of the reasons that they were calling me was that they didn't feel there was a place to call. They called the police department. They were told that this was not something that they should be calling the police department for. They should call Eversource. And if you call Eversource, you get all kinds of answering machines and messages and press buttons and so on. So I think a way of communicating a little more hands-on way with citizens of the town to communicate how much we care for their predicament is a good way to go. And as I say, I appreciate the ideas that have been posted on Nextdoor Sherborn. So I welcome this discussion and would like to see it on an early agenda.
Could you vote to add it to an agenda, an upcoming agenda?
I think we should just add it to the upcoming
Okay.
agenda.
Okay.
I mean, you know,
I think there's a clear consensus.
Nobody opposed?
yeah, I think we want to talk about it. I mean, and those are worthy ideas to talk about. You know, my experience with Eversource is you can report either on your phone or on another device or by phone. You can report that you have an outage, and at that point, calling them doesn't really do anything for you. I mean, they're out there trying to fix it. We saw Eversource trucks, we saw Verizon trucks, we saw CM&D trucks, police vehicles, fire vehicles. They were all over the town. They were cutting trees out of the road. They were doing all kinds of stuff. It was a bad storm. People get frustrated. They're anxious. They don't know what's going on. But you know, we'll have a good debate, Paul, about whether setting up an office for people to call and ask the town to tell them what's going on is really a good use of town resources.
Well, most communities do that, I point out.
I personally called the police department about a tree on a wire next to my house, and they took it down, and it was responded to, and I called CM&D about another tree down on our street, and those departments were responsive within our town, and I think they They had a lot to deal with, and all three departments did a very good job.
I just think it'll be good to get out in the open, how we, as public safety people responding, how you triage, but each of the utilities are triaging the same way that you're feeding into.
The one thing I would add is I think it's important to have Eversource here at the meeting, because I think there's a lot of input and advice that they've done this in a lot of different towns, a lot of different, figuring out the best practices. I'd like to get their input as well.
Yes, when I had maybe 15 calls with Eversource, and they had a lot of ideas that they thought would help them with regard to Sherborn and other communities.
Can you
They-
tell us? No, never mind.
This isn't the agenda item time to have that discussion. I'm asking
But
for
we
a
should have,
check.
but we should have that discussion. I don't know if we're gonna be able to get Eversource out here on a command performance. They've been pretty busy recently. You know, we've called them in the past when there have been issues with their response in a prior storm, when we've talked to them about
This is just trying to figure out how
maintenance issues and things
to
like
do it
that.
better if we can, so.
Yeah,
I think these past three storms, especially Eversource has been incredibly responsive. I know for two of them, actually for all three, it was either myself or Chief Thompson or JD who were in direct contact, and I'm talking about literally almost every hour on the hour, having a phone conference, going through the queue, correlating the queue and dispatch to what they had and back and forth, and usually every time they were right on it. There was, I think, one time where we had a phone conference and they missed 2 streets, and that was probably because the 2 streets were, the events that took place on them happened, within 10 minutes before the call. So there probably wasn't time for them to get it in the queue, but, he took the information immediately. Every other time, we were right on top of it. And, I think they were incredibly responsive. And
Yeah.
I was actually,
but the idea is not to have the discussion right now, Chief, because it's not on the agenda. And under the open meeting law, we're not supposed to have a discussion.
Well, I think, Paul, you've raised the issue and you've reported how residents were saying it wasn't responsive. I think it's fair for the chief to be able to say that he thinks it was responsive, and then we can have a substantive discussion, at a later time on the policy stuff. But this is more of a report on his feeling about it. I don't think that, I mean, you put the ball into play. I think it's not fair to leave it out there that, that the residents are dissatisfied if there's another view here.
I was
I
communicating.
think we should also credit Sean, because I don't think he told the number, but, Eversource took a lot of trees down in the fall that were at risk. I think what's the number, 180 trees or something like that?
And Eversource.
We're gonna bring Eversource in, we should give them a personal thank you.
He pushed to get that done, which would have been more trees that would have been down if we hadn't done that, so.
And it was done on
Of course,
Eversource's dime.
correct, but it was
$250,000 worth of trees.
a lot of,
Tree work.
Sean's work caused that to happen.
Verizon or Eversource?
Eversource.
Was it
Eversource.
Eversource? I didn't know,
We haven't done that in 10 years.
because Verizon has the poles, so I didn't know.
Yeah, so
Or
that was
some-
gonna be my point, was later this year, I was gonna try to put together a meeting with you guys and Verizon, because they own the pole set. And they've been lagging behind prior to all these storms with the double pole issue. And, I mean, we had a long discussion one night about a pole set they wanted to do in Ash Lane to replace a tree root that's holding a pole up. So there was already issues. Mike didn't get to take part.
No, that's fine. So we
So if we're gonna
can build
discuss
that
it
into
with
something too.
Eversource, it's a,
Yeah.
remember, there's
Yeah.
a handshake deal there with Eversource and Verizon.
All right, so David, put it on the next agenda
Yeah.
after the advisory hearing?
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is, and part of the town administrator report was that when we have these emergency situations, there are certain protocols that get kicked into place, and we don't make up those protocols. They come down from FEMA to MEMA to the local people. It's not something that we invent, it's something that we follow and that they train for. So there's been some misinformation about who our emergency management director is. So we refer to the emergency management team.
Who is our emergency manager?
Emergency management director is right there, is our fire
Kenny.
chief.
I think if you actually look at the records of the town, he is not the emergency management director.
He was hired, it's right in his contract.
But we voted someone else to be the emergency management director. So if that's his contract, I would like to make him the emergency management director.
So let's put that on the agenda too.
So let's appoint him, let's formally take a vote and make him the emergency management
What you
director.
did when you signed the contract.
Don't think that's the way it works.
It was in the contract you appointed him. I don't know what you're changing.
Appointing him officially the title of emergency management director.
I think you've already done that, but we'll talk about that. We'll
If
double
we-
check that.
If we've already done it, then there's no harm doing it again.
Right,
certainly
exactly,
implicit.
there's not.
It's certainly
You're right.
implicit in the approval of the contract, but if there's something we need to do, we should do it.
So I hear two discussions here for purposes of future agendas. And, you know, one is what actually happens and what the protocol is and how that is, how that works inside, which I think would be helpful for everybody to know about. And the other is the point Paul's raising, which is what do people think is happening or think is not happening, and communications about that and whether there's a need to get information out a different way or get information out at all or get information out in a specific, about specific things. And those are both, I think they're separate discussions, but they should be on the same agenda. They both are important discussions.
Well, I'm not sure that second item needs much discussion because it's now being proposed to fix it. There is already action being taken.
Well, what you're doing is you're going, this is how we operate. He is the emergency management director, so we want to make whatever needs to happen to officially reflect our practice. That's,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, yes, that's a technical vote that we have to take to actually.
No, I was going beyond that technical, I was talking about the initial point you raised, which is people don't know what's going on. So I think we need to
No,
know what
was
is
it-
going on, and then also talk about mechanisms for letting them know what's going on in real time.
Well, the way I phrased it was that there was a proposal from the two chiefs to implement a communication system, which I think is a great idea. And I was praising that reform, and I don't see that we need to undermine that reform. That's good
Well,
stuff
I
that
didn't
they're
even
being
understand what
done.
you're saying. I didn't hear anything about a reform or
Yeah.
communication system. I heard about backdoor Sherborn or next door Sherborn, whatever it is.
Yes.
And somebody complaining about there not being
No, there
a
was.
communication system.
If you read Next Door Sherborn,
I don't.
this is what I was trying to say. There was a proposal presented by the police chief and the fire chief to implement in Sherborn a method of better communication with citizens. And that's exactly what other communities do. It's what I think is needed in this town, and I was commending the chiefs for that reform.
Well, let's talk
That-
about that then.
At our meeting, when we have it on the agenda.
But yeah, we can talk about that because it's, when they're on the
Let's put it on
website
the
responding to questions,
and then
they
talk
should be
about it.
dealing with
Yeah,
emergencies.
I think that's what we're trying to get to.
I agree.
Well, we'll see, when the agenda gets drafted, we can figure out how to phrase it.
The last thing in my report, the advisory hearing is Saturday, as you know, and it begins at 8:45 a.m. We posted the Board of Selectmen meeting for 8 a.m. We don't have any breakfast items planned, but we do have lunch.
Wait, so 8 AM, what do we need to be there at 8 AM for, since the only things we've usually do at that meeting we just did?
You can post for a later time, you just can't post for an earlier time, if you want to change that.
Haven't we already posted?
You posted
We
for
did.
For
8.
8, my only point is, do we need to show up at 8 if we don't have enough?
We would
quorum?
be there to post you later, if you were going to post at, if you wanted to post at 8:30. We would be there
We're beyond
to-
posting.
Yeah,
We've already posted.
I agree with Paul, it's just when are we gonna show up?
Posted on the door, I mean,
It's okay, when are we gonna show up? Does the board feel like there's a reason to be there at 8 o'clock, or should we show up at 8:20 or
Do
something?
we have other business to conduct?
That's what I'm thinking, I don't think we have other business, do we, David?
no, in years past, we have, but I think you've taken
Years
care of it all
past, we've
tonight.
taken all these votes, but
Right.
the moral plan got us going today, and we voted the whole thing, so this was perfect.
So show up at 8:44 or something, you're saying?
No. 8:30, let's, 8:20, 8:30? 8:30, George says 8:30.
A moral
8:30
plan,
makes
I
sense.
like that.
Okay. And now we have, are we gonna go into executive session, David? Are we not going into executive session?
We are going in, yeah, I recommend that you go into executive session with to return to open session.
Before we do that, can we talk about the next scheduled meeting after the advisory meeting? Because I don't have it as 3:26. I'm out of town on business. That certainly you have a quorum without me, but,
Wait, I
That's
thought
what
our
we
next
set last
meeting
time.
was was
Monday
Monday
the
the 26th.
Yeah.
We had all talked about that.
Yeah, and I unfortunately, I've got to be out of town on business, so
Okay. You can call in, Chuck. Remote participation. Does that sound exciting?
that's very exciting.
Okay. All right, what's after the 26th then?
Do you want it moved? Or do-
I can do it on the 28th, 29th, and 30th, but I don't think, we're not going to have if we're scheduling the discussion of the two agenda items that we just talked about, I'd like to be present for that. So I would ask to see if we could move it to the 28th, 29th, or 30th.
Yeah, and we kind of, we
The 30th.
pushed it back from those 3 days because nobody could do it, so.
Yep.
All right, so then put it on for an April agenda, David. Okay? So we'll meet on the 26th with whatever business we have. We'll talk about this emergency management stuff. Hopefully it'll be done snowing by April. We can talk about it then.
No, he's just asked that it not be talked about on the 26th.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So hopefully
We're
we
moving
just,
that to-
hopefully April will be a better
Will
month.
we have
to
a
talk
meeting
about.
on Thursday, April 5th? Will that be-
No, not that week. How about the next week? Oh, I can't even do Thursday the 12th.
I don't have my
Wednesday, the
schedule with me.
11th.
Wednesday the 11th I could do. Can anybody do Wednesday the 11th, Paul? Do you know?
I don't have my schedule with me. Unfortunately, I
can't do the
left my
11th.
phone at home.
All right, on Saturday, we're gonna set an April meeting.
Okay.
Everybody bring their
Bring your
calendars.
calendars.
We'll do that at 8:30.
And we still have the 26th meeting?
Yeah, unless there's no agenda items, you can tell me next week whether we need to meet and.
Yeah, we will.
All right, the board will now consider entering to executive session under chapter 38, section 21-2 to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Sean Colleen, CMD Director, thanks Jeff, thanks Sharon. Director, Facilities Manager, the board may return to open session. I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
Second by Selectman Yan. Mr. Durensis.
Votes aye.
Mr. Yan.
Aye.
Mr. Morrow.
Abstain.
Abstain, and Mr. Jimo is aye, having passed by a vote of 3-0 to 1 at 9:10 PM, daylight savings time. The open session is closed, and we are now in executive session. Good night, George.
Good night, George.
All right, great. We're back into open session after a quick, short executive session for the purposes of signing an employment agreement between the town of Sherborn and Sean Colleen for Community Maintenance and Development Director and Facilities Manager. It's been signed by Mr. Colleen, and I guess we have to take a vote to formally adopt it and sign it right now. Yes. Do we have a motion on that?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded to adopt this contract and execute this contract. All in favor? Very good. Thank you. May I borrow a blue pen, Paul? Thank you. All right.
Finally.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Sean.
It's the slow clap.
Now I'll make it stop snowing.
Yeah, now you will.
And I'm only
Ready
signing
to
this because
remind you
my,
again tomorrow?
and Sean, I'm only signing this because my mailbox is intact, it's upright. My mailbox hasn't been knocked down this time, so
This
that's,
isn't blue.
well done. You avoided
Are you
knocking
gonna
over my
hold
mailbox.
It's funny. It's a blue. It'll be fine.
Don't forget, you need to move to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Great. All right, we're adjourned.